Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome to EduTALK. EduTALK is a weekly virtual talk show created out of the need for a global learning community, and we focus on topics in education that directly impact Caribbean nations and diaspora nationals working across the globe. And we feature teachers, principals, and business leaders as much as possible share their expertise in critical topics facing education today with a common goal of moving education forward and our students upward. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host. I'm Dr. Dwayne Des. I'm the founder and CEO of Education Solutions International, and Dr. Barker here with us as well. And we have our guest with us, Professor Rosalie Hamilton, and she is the founding director of the Institute of Law and Economics. And she's also the co-chair of Advocates Network, and that is located in Jamaica, doing work right across the Caribbean and having tentacles across the globe. So, Dr. Barker, go with the greetings, and then we'll hear from Professor Hamilton, who is not a stranger to EduTalk. Go ahead.
Not at all, not at all. As usual, we're quite excited to have the erudite Dr. Rosalea Hamilton just talking to us about what the amazing work they're doing with the advocacy network to not only inform and educate, but also excite people in the process of constitutional reform and recognize and letting them become more aware of the role they can play in nation building. So as usual, I look forward to the conversation. And since it's the first time that I'm back on the show this year, I might want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Every time people say that they're going into a new year, I'm going to put this message out that everybody start the new year saying that they're going to change something and change themselves. My message this year to people is rather than try to change yourself, just be yourself. Happy New Year to everyone. Rather than change, just be yourself. All right. Over to you, Dr. Dice. Let's get the show going.
Yeah. Professor Hamilton, you're no stranger here. People have seen you on different programs everywhere across the globe. You see this idea of reform and so on, and you can greet people before you start. A Fui Republic, and I love this sling, this swing to it. A Fui Republic. How is the initiative going? And remind people, what is that slogan? What does it represent? A Fui Republic.
Okay, great. Well, first, let me greet both of you and say Happy New Year to you
Yes.
and your listeners. And I like that word of advice, be yourself. Always good advice. So, Fui Jamaica, Fui Republic, Fui Jamaica are, it's just a label that says Jamaica, and this republic that we want to build belongs to us. And I think it's important that we see this republic as some that belongs to us, and we must be at the center of creating this republic. And so those ideas are integral to an understanding of the label that we've given Phoebe Republic. At the center of this conversation are two important things that define what we do in the Advocates Network: governance and human rights. And so in our review that we did last year, we highlighted some of the issues that we're facing in Jamaica with respect to governance and human rights. But I always like to start by talking about what does governance really mean? Because we use the term and sometimes it's kind of fuzzy. What exactly is it? Is it the same thing as government? So people use the terms kind of interchangeably. But I like to think about it simply as thinking about the way we organize and manage our society.
Yep.
Right? It involves the decisions, the rules that we put in place to organize and manage what we're doing well, and to do it in a way that everyone is treated fairly. So we always strive for the best interests of the people in the society. And it's kind of like teamwork. Most of us have been in teams and we have to work together and we have to make decisions. And all of this is to achieve a common goal.
Yeah.
And we have to treat people fairly in the process. So I like to think about governance as the way Team Jamaica works, how it's organized, how it's managed. And if in the real world, we hire people to manage our country, Jamaica, on our behalf. So the dialogue tends to look political and so on because we're talking about this relationship between we, the owners of Jamaica, and the people that we want to manage Jamaica on our behalf. And so we are very, very watchful of the way our representatives and public officials that are hired to manage the government, how they conduct public affairs, how they manage these resources, and how they comply with the rule of law, right? And importantly, how in all of that, we get to realize our full potentials of human beings as human, with respect to human rights, and how we fulfill these obligations under the International Human Rights Convention. So all of that is pulls together who we are as the Advocates Network, what we're trying to do with respect to governance and its important relationship to human rights. So I can jump right into some of the governance issues we've highlighted, and then, you know, we can kind of talk through that, and then we can talk about some of the human rights issues. We started with the concerns we have with the fact that our Prime Minister has yet to satisfy the requirements of the Integrity Commission with respect to his obligations under the commission to declare his assets, right? And so this requirement, of course, is not unique to Jamaica. It is almost a standard now with good governance that public officials are held to, this idea that you declare, you know, what you have. And we do it because we want to make sure that during your term of office, there's not this term illicit enrichment. And we are further troubled by the fact that the Integrity Commission also is investigating 6 of our parliamentarians for suspicion of illicit enrichment. That is of concern. And the Advocates Network and others are concerned that these very parliamentarians may be in the parliament as part of the oversight and review of the Integrity Commission. So we flagged that as something that is truly of concern. We also highlighted something that a lot of people in the diaspora has been very, very concerned about, which is the state of one of our financial institutions, Stocks and Securities Limited, the SSL. And that whole multi-million-dollar fraud was very, very troubling. It involved one of our icons in Jamaica, as you know. And so this is something that really gets to the heart of good governance, gets to the heart of the management of these institutions. And there are lots of questions that are unresolved when we were told, for example, that, you know, there was theft, you know, and the computers, the laptops were missing. And what is happening there? You know, who will be held accountable for this? So there's lots of concerns about that. We feel that the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act was upgraded, reviewed, and the regulations put in place, but these regulations are not in effect. So we need to make sure that who we select on the board, their qualifications and so on, matters. And I think we will get better outcomes if we don't continue to put political, you know, connected people who are there because of their connections with the relevant minister.
So you're saying that there is very little checks and balances in the system right now, that nobody is holding parliamentarians accountable for public affairs?
Well, the accountability measures are there. Let me say that we first of all have a lot of accountability institutions. So, you know, the Integrity Commission is one, the Auditor General is there. You know, we have institutions, you know, that investigate and provide oversight. However, the reports go to Parliament, and then there are parliamentary committees that meet and discuss, may meet and discuss, I should say, because the frequency within which they should meet, that the government recently felt was so appalling that the government changed the leadership of these committees to put members of parliament from the ruling party to ensure that, you know, they can carry out their mandate. But the evidence suggests that the frequency of meeting is either the same or not significantly better. So that committee, however, rarely makes these committees, these parliamentary committees, rarely makes recommendation to Parliament on which a decision and a decisive decision is made with respect to what we see as breaches under the rules. And so we don't see the level and scale of accountability that matches the kinds of recommendations and information that is evident in these reports by the Auditor General, the Accountant General, and all of these organizations who have this responsibility for oversight. And a good case is what we're seeing right now in the IC. So the Integrity Commission submits a report saying 6 parliamentarians you know, are under investigation, and now it's stuck. It's stuck in a parliamentary process in which it seems as if a game is being played, because the very rules that should have, that were in place with respect to the procedure of making these reports transparent is now being redefined by the Speaker. It now goes to committees first before it can be labeled in Parliament. And so those kinds of issues are cause for concern, and the oversight at the level of the existing framework we think needs to be strengthened. And we do need to set up explicitly defined oversight committee that can do their work and provide oversight, not just of as part of that process of the oversight institutions, but importantly, provide oversight about the decisions of cabinet and the Prime Minister. It is our representatives in Parliament who ought to hold the executive accountable for some of these decisions that are being made. And right now, we don't see accountability with respect to the decisions that the cabinet and the Prime Minister is making. And last point there to illustrate it is what happened with respect to the salaries. Yes. So the cabinet made a decision. It included members of Parliament. They simply heard when all of us heard, apparently, because the parliamentarians, they said they didn't know what was what was recommended, etc., etc. And even if the parliamentarians wanted to change the decision of cabinet, there's no mechanisms and there's no let me say, no habit, I should say, of doing so, because under the Constitution, the cabinet is accountable to the Parliament.
So much to discuss in that, Barker. So much.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other, I quickly mention some other governance issues we highlighted. For example, the delay in the local government election. It's 7 years in coming, and we think it's time, and it's connected to the constitutional discussion we're having, because part of the delays has to do with the fact that the Prime Minister has this responsibility to call the election when he or she wants. And so the question is, why can't we have fixed election dates? And so that is part of the constitutional discussion that is taking place. And we feel that more needs to be done with respect to education around the Constitution. And importantly, more needs to be done with respect to the people of Jamaica asserting their right to have a say around the Constitution, so that we can get a Constitution that we, the people, actively participate in and create a government
So,
for the people, by the people,
Professor,
and of the people.
so
Yeah.
Professor, as usual, you have a very passionate presentation, you know, and normally as normal, it's a very clear, very articulate presentation. But I have a question, and I'm going to throw a little bit into the mix here, because given that you have highlighted the fact that currently the people, and I suspect your point, while relevant to the current government, I would expect, I'm a Jamaican, that this point about corruption and the abuse of the system would extend across both representative
Absolutely.
parties. That's a fact that I could clearly show the evidence that both use the system to their benefit. But you have recommended the panacea of a republic. And
I have not recommended a panacea reform. Let me correct you right there. The government of the day has informed the siblings of our head of state that he plans to move on. And we understand the moving on that we're going to create a republic, and
okay,
we're in the process of that.
Okay.
so yeah, so my point though is the republic is something that Jamaica, no question, that has to be the maturity stage. It is a stepping away, cutting off the umbilical cord to the colonial government structure, slavery and all that, right? So that has to be the move. But I don't know if when you were making the point, I detected a feeling like this was going to resolve some of the issues that we see now. And so I just wanted to clarify whether that was what you were saying or whether it was two separate points.
It's an excellent point, because let's be clear that these concepts of how we define society, whether we call it a republic, whether we call it a federal state, whether we call it democracy, whatever label we use, we're typically using a label to describe an ideal, the ideal society we want to create that enables us as human beings to live together in peace, harmony, achieve what we want. So let's be clear that a republic is not a panacea for our problems. So having said that, question is, how do we get closer to these ideals? How do we deepen and improve our democracy so that we can achieve the dreams and aspiration of the Jamaican people? And I think if you frame it that way, then what you see is a process towards creating this republic that is ongoing. We just have to look at North America, and we see that, you know, the Americans are still struggling with this ideal of a democracy.
Exactly,
Right? And they've not perfected it, right?
Yeah.
And it's there in the wording of their constitution in order to perfect their union, right? They're setting up this constitutional
Towards
arrangement
a more perfect union,
towards a more perfect union, absolutely, right? And it is the towards point that is instructive. What is that path? That path has to be anchored on the will of the people. And that's embedded in the idea of a democracy.
But typically a republic, in the removal of the head of state being, you know, the Queen of England, and for many people that represented a steadying hand, not so much a governance hand, but a steadying hand to control the excesses of people. So while our government might be corrupt, there's a certain limit to that corruption, including the connections. You know, there's a certain limit, feeling like there's something to appeal to. What a republic tends to do is shift all of that power, even that kind of hovering kind of power. It maybe doesn't exist in the real form, back to Jamaica in this case, and back into the hands of people that
it was never in our hands.
Right. So back to the hands of the people in Jamaica, who we are seeing that even with this, the parliamentary powers that they have been found to be not necessarily statesman-like in some sense. So my worry, and it's not it's a worry, not I'll take the word worry about. My wondering is how will this, when we reach that point, you know, like when we get to the vision of a republic, how do we expect those people to function with this newfound executive powers and all of these? Because right now, I don't see enough evidence that that power is, I don't see where it would sit, you know, what kind of mechanisms we have. And just to belabor the point a little, that we have seen in the US, which they do have high levels of checks and balances in their system, but still struggle to contain when people decide to be corrupt. So I just want to understand that, whether that's part of the discussions you guys are having as you try to educate people and excite them as well about this new future.
All right, so you've said a lot. I want to start with that idea of the hoovering stability that the monarchy provides, and just get us to switch our mind quickly to the scenario in 1838. That was the fear, same fear, that you unleash these uncivilized people, right, the savages and so on, and you need the stability. So you had that. You had the same conversation when we went to independence, right? In 62, same concern. Can these people govern themselves? This is going to be chaos, breakdown of society. So that's one lens, and I don't buy it. I think that if we are self-respecting Jamaicans and truly believe in the capacity we have to be the best in the world, as we've demonstrated in our sports and in our music and so on, and in the work that the diaspora does. There's so many Jamaicans who go abroad and they shine, right? That's the same capacity that exists in Jamaica, physically, here on the ground. And we don't lack the capacity to run our country well. Having said that, I understand the concern because we have been running the country since 1962 in the hands of a few. And the break that we need to make is to shift the control and dominance of our society out of the hands of the few and into the hands of the majority. That's the democratic promise. We shift the power that's concentrated in the hands of our executive and our prime minister in particular into the people's hands. It is a shifting of the sovereignty that was real prior to our independence, when we had real governors who dominated our lives. We saw a shift in 62 to the executive, the cabinet, who makes all the decisions and don't have to consult anybody, including our elected representatives in parliament, because the executive dominates our parliamentary decisions. And it is when we recognize that problem and we think again about how we fix that, that I think we will get different results. We've never had the power in our hands, and we don't know what it looks like when the power is truly in our hands, when we truly have a voice in shaping the decisions that affect our lives.
Yeah. Let me build, that's very, very key points there you make, Professor Amatan. Let me build on Dr. Barker. He has some really good one in terms of the central government and who is going to benefit long term. And what came to me is the idea of the central government, that they are making, the executive branch is making all the decisions right across Jamaica. And if we can start, I don't know how soon this idea of a republic is going to germinate and take root in the hearts of Jamaicans. But what I come to realize is the centralized government is so, even to this day, right now in Jamaica, where the parish council has very little power in terms of fixing roads and their education in whichever parish you're in. It still comes from the central government of Jamaica. So those tiny, I call them tiny decisions that
Not
but
tiny.
yeah, they're big decisions that we're supposed to decentralize government so that it goes to the parishes and the parishes can make their own decisions on certain aspects of roads and governance in terms of education and so on. Is there a way that the central government talking about these shifts so that the a sort of governance can be shared with these different sections, and I'm calling them sections, but they're really parish councils. And if they can share governance so that they can decentralize the government as a whole, that they don't become, it's almost as if we're talking to um, a type of communistic regime, but we're not naming it that because the government is
Centralized power.
yes, it's making and they really need to dismantle that and give and I really hate to compare it to with the US and the States, but that's it's a type of example that that the parishes really need to have some leverage of power and leadership over their region. What is
But I'll
happening?
rephrase the question, not so much if there's a discussion among the central government, but whether there's a discussion among the people of Jamaica.
That,
Because we are the ones who are supposed to have that conversation and make that demand, especially this opportunity that they've now given us to put constitutional change on the table. Remember, the government has said that they are putting in place the most profound, meaningful constitutional reform process that we've had in Jamaica since our independence. This is the language of the terms of reference of the Constitution Reform Committee. So if we're serious, then the points you're raising, the excellent points you're raising with respect to the power in the hands of the people with respect to local government must be part of that process. I raised it earlier. You can't have a situation where an individual decides the election date at the local and national level. And an election date affects all our lives. There's no opportunity to plan properly and so on because this thing is looming and it may have, come on. This is 2023. We've been talking about fixed lists for far too long. So I absolutely agree with you. And I think that that's why we have been saying for a long time, as part of our advocacy in the Advocates Network, that moving the king is not enough. We have to deepen the governance arrangement and ensure that there are mechanisms in place to hear the voice of the Jamaican people, not just lip service, but actual legal constitutional mechanisms to hear our voice. And
let
we
me ask
need
you.
to have effective oversight on the
Yeah,
executive, in particular, our prime minister.
yeah. So from the Advocates Network, you see your most recent press release, and it starts off for those of us who haven't gotten a finger on it. It says that the Advocates Network is calling Jamaicans to review their push for better governance, greater accountability and transparency for the island while building on the lessons learned and the takeaways from 2023. And this is from January 2024. So it just released. I want to ask you, based on everything that we're discussing, no, what is the difference in the push this year? Because I know we have featured you on this program a few times, quite a few times, and we have been talking about reaching the people, having town halls, the common people, because this is about the people, to get the people involved. Is there any greater focus on certain areas of communities that you're talking about greater push? Because it's very important for people to understand it. And a lot of them are not reading newspapers or some not even listening to the news. They're not watching anything except TikTok. So what's the new form of push
Yeah,
that
it's a very good question. To clarify, part of our conversation is that we need to do more on the public education front.
Mhm.
And we have been very disappointed And in fact, we said in the press release that the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, with the responsibility to not only manage this Constitution Reform Committee, but to lead us down this path of a republic. The taxpayers have spent $1.6 billion as our money has been allocated to this ministry over the past 2 years. And we are very disappointed that we don't see an extensive, comprehensive education program. Now, this is where programs like yours matter, because we think we have to push harder to say to Jamaican people, not only you need to make your voice heard louder about the necessity of a comprehensive education program, but importantly, don't wait for that. Let's do our own education. Let's educate each other. Let's do what exactly you're doing on this program, talking about it. So, and giving the opportunity for others, your listeners, to learn, to understand, to question, to strengthen their own views, because some people may disagree. But, let's have this conversation and ensure that we can benefit from each other. So rather than wait for this magic to happen, let's agree that as owners of Jamaica, we too have a responsibility. And so this program and others, I have been discussing this on a lot of online media. We are going to do more articles, open letters. We're just going to keep our advocacy going. And we're encouraging more Jamaicans to join us and to undertake whatever they see fit as an important step down the road of deepening our understanding and fostering a more educated Jamaica with respect to not just constitutional reform, but with respect to governance, human rights, and what matters for pushing our country to a different level.
Let me ask you, so at the moment, the process is on its way. For our listeners, and I'm hoping that some of our listeners, Dr. Dice, are not just TikTokers, right? In fact, I'm hoping that our listeners are people who want to engage with this information. So if someone was to ask the question, where are we right now in this journey towards a republic? What is the best way you could describe that so they would walk away going, at least we know where we are? Because sometimes if you know how near or how far you are away from something, it determines the pace at which you walk and the information that you're willing to receive. And I think you're well aware that sometimes these things can be a slow creep. And then one day we're at a massive inflection point. And at that time, even expressing displeasure, expressing clear logical points, the process just does not allow a return to that point. And at that time, you might hear people say, we have not been included. And whichever parties on the opposition side will make the point that people were not included at the points when they should. So from as you advocate, you have to advocate on behalf of, and you need us to support the advocacy. So where are we now? Where is it? Not necessarily, where is it at the point?
All right, so let me answer it two ways. From our perspective, at the Advocates Network and among many civil society organizations, we're still at the starting block.
Okay.
Right? The starting block where we're having a conversation, we're getting the message out to Jamaicans that we are about to start, we are ready to engage, we have a ministry set up to take the country down the road of a republic. Now, most Jamaicans, I would argue, is not aware of it. I would argue that.
Yeah.
Most Jamaicans are not even aware. Because I walk around as I go into society, I talk to people, are you aware of this, and I ask, and I would say 7 out of 10 people say no, they're not aware. So not just starting blocks, meaning what this constitutional reform is, the role and significance of a constitution in our society, these terms, that's why I started the program with defining the term governance, because we assume that people understand that this is the heart of the Constitution. And these two concepts that we started with, governance and human rights, is at the core of what a Constitution represents. Mechanisms for governance and human rights, provisions, etc. There's more, but those are two key areas of the Constitution. So explaining these things to Jamaicans and importantly, making clear the role of the people in making this change. Why is that important? Because for far too long, 61 years, what we've had is a set of people in government who make decisions on our behalf. And other than getting our voice with respect to who should be representing us, we have had no opportunity to hold any kind of a referendum where our voice can be heard on an issue. And there's no mechanisms in between elections to hear our voice. So this is a significant step in our nation's history, and we want it to be a meaningful one, as the government has said in the terms of reference of the Constitution Reform Committee. And therefore, we feel extensive, comprehensive education is key, and that we're not there yet. No, when we listen to the minister speaks about where we are, we hear there have been attempts, and I agree, to engage dialogue with the public. So we've seen town halls and so on. There is opportunity, and I agree, to participate in writing what you want to see change in the Constitution. The Advocates Network have gone to the committee and we have presented our thoughts. So those things have happened. We argue it's not enough. We're still at the starting blocks. And that the minister has said she wants to table a bill in the first quarter of this year. We think that is way too premature, because the extensive education that even members of the committee say they want to see is not happening.
Yeah. Well, the people you talk to, when you go around Jamaica and talk to them, some of those people who are very unaware of the situation, not situation, the process, unaware of it. Do they share concern, or they just said, oh, I'm unaware of this? You know, do they share concern that they need more information and they need to be involved?
Of course, all the time. We hear it all the time. And why? We don't need to hear that from people. I can say this as a professional that has studied the Constitution, that have taught constitutional matters, that I am still learning. I'm still learning. I still want to engage the discussion to deepen my understanding.
Yeah.
So it's part of the human process of learning about these complex issues that have impact on our lives. It's a necessary part. No, I am not naive, and I don't think any of you, you're all educational experts. We all know that despite your best effort, you will not have 100% or 90% or even 80 or 70% deep understanding of these issues. We know that. But what is important is that we have to give everybody an opportunity. When you stand in a classroom and you teach, everybody's hearing. There's a lot of distraction. But every child in that classroom, every human being in that room has an opportunity to hear, to learn, to understand. The rest is up to them. And I think that's the responsibility we think we all have, and the government has, to provide this information to people. They either listen or they don't. They either understand or they don't. And then we can take it from there.
All right. Professor Hamilton, we're pressed on time. I'm gonna invite you back on here to talk about the human rights part of this. But let's summarize this for this segment. How is the education part of it? How is that going to be helpful? Or maybe I should turn it another way. The Advocates Network, What do you need help with in order to get a lot of this information and awareness in schools and in churches?
Well, we absolutely need the support on the ground. I think we have a lot of people, including young people. I mean, this is a discussion for young people. There are a lot of young voices that are part of debate, engagements, debating societies, and so on, who are already armed with the information and want an opportunity to engage. Usually, there is a financial constraint. And so financial support to literally roll out a campaign where we go into schools, we go into communities, into churches, etc., with a message and with the kinds of information and environment that can facilitate learning. So that's one level. But I also want to say what you're doing is exactly what needs to be done as well. So you have created a platform, the conversation is ongoing, and the more people tune in to these kinds of conversations, they will learn at least one thing, I think. And so the more we do this, the more we learn. And there are many other ways, the use of the music, of the arts and culture, whether it's poetry, whether it's music, and so on. All of those are engaging ways to capture the minds of our people and to convey ideas about this important step that our country is about to take.
Yeah,
Love
very
it.
important. My God. But I really want to thank you because you're very involved. And I'm just sitting here, in awe that you, as a fellow Jamaican, just taking this burden on yourself to see this through. It just
It's not
it
just me alone. Let me say that,
no, I'm
advocates are
speaking.
doing it and others. Yes.
No, no, I'm giving you the props. I know you're very humble, and you're taking it up. I know there are others, and in their own right, we thank them. In this regard, I'm just saying that to see you, because I've seen you on several different programs too, doing this, writing these press releases, and still maintaining your regular professional work. And it's not easy. It's really not easy to carry an entire nation on your back. There are other people who are carrying the nation too in the same, probably equal measures. But it's, I really commend you for it to keep up with it day in, day out. Dr. Barker, yeah, final quick thought.
No, I think you sum it up already, but I always enjoy the exchanges that we have with Professor Hamilton. I think I hear her point, and I do understand, your response to my question, that we are at this starting point, right? And that means we have a long way to go if it is a starting point. But countries like the US, they are 200 and something years into their republic, and they're still trying to form a perfect union. And
Absolutely.
so for me, watching from a distance, I've left Jamaica 20 plus years now. I am one of the few in the diaspora that don't believe that I should be voting on matters in Jamaica. There are many who strongly believe that we should have a vote. I don't believe in it. It's my personal opinion. But I'm interested, and when I see people like you so passionate and trying to make the case, we're willing to amplify those voices so that people can hear. So whenever you're ready and feel like you're in a teaching mood again, come along. So our listeners, our viewers can get signed off a little bit from them TikTok and from them Facebook and whatever, so that they can realize that there is still an opportunity for them to join this conversation. And I think that's the critical piece I'll take away from this, is that there are many people who will go, not what me say can't influence. Them already make them mind. These are the kind of attitudes that you'll find even in the educated. And so you making that point, that we're still at a point where it is still early days in this conversation, can help to embolden some otherwise silenced or voices to join the conversation. So thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts and your passion. And as usual, you have a friend in us. So
Thank you so much for having me. And all I can say is keep up the good work and, join our efforts. And I encourage your listeners to join the efforts to make your voice heard on this matter. It is important for the future of Jamaica. So let's do it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let's do it. Let's do it. This has been EduTalk, everybody. Thank you so much for viewing, for listening. Please reach out to us at edusolutionsintl@gmail.com or visit our website at educationsolutionsinternational.org or edusolutionsintl.org. And you know where to find us. You can check us out, Google us, look at EduTalk, there are other features. But this is very important. The reformation of Jamaican constitution is very, very important to all of us in the diaspora as Jamaicans and back home too in Jamaica. I really appreciate the presence of Professor Milton to be with us. And we're talking about the vision that we have for the future of education on a whole for our people. What good, everybody, and we'll see you next week with another edition. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. All the best. Thank you.